Brothers and sisters, today I'd like to talk a little about obesity. In the last 40 years, the number of obese men has tripled and obese women has doubled, while the number of underweight people has dropped. For the first time in history, obese people worldwide outnumber those who are underweight. A total of 641 million people throughout the world were obese in 2014. Think on it, nearly twice the population of the U.S. are obese. Now in the U.S., more than a third of adults are obese. By 2025, this could reach as much as 45%. There have always been obese people, but never in the proportions that we are seeing. Think of it. In just 9 years, almost half of the adults in this country are predicted to be obese. This is without precedent. Something qualitatively new is happening here. There is no doubt that this is a crisis, an epidemic, if you will. Closely associated with the epidemic in obesity is the epidemic of diabetes. We are told that the world is facing an unrelenting march of diabetes, which now affects 1 in 11 adults worldwide. According to statistics from the World Health Organization, diabetes rates increased 4 times between 1980 and 2014, up from 108 million to 422 million people. World Health Organization officials warn that diabetes rates will continue to climb unless drastic action is taken. And besides diabetes, there is a long, very tragic and sorrowful list of other ailments intimately associated with obesity. And this includes hypertension, heart disease, stroke, gallbladder disease, cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's, and kidney disease. Dr. McCullough, a tireless champion of organic living and wholesome nutrition, is convinced that the largest causal factor is processed foods. And there's no doubt there's an immense truth in this. As he tells us, in my mind, current obesity rates are an artifact of eating a processed food diet that is too high in carbs and poor quality protein and too low in healthy fat. A high-fat, low net carb diet is really the key that can turn this trend around. It's important to realize that you don't get fat from eating fat. You get fat from not effectively burning fat. And that's the metabolic result of a high sugar diet. Sugar very effectively impairs your body's ability to burn fat for fuel. He goes on to say we should eat more healthy fat and less carbs and protein. Reduce net carbs to under 50 grams a day and restrict protein to 1 gram per kilogram of lean body mass. The remaining calories should come from high-quality fats, such as avocados, nut butters, coconut oils, macadamias, and pecans. A large part of the answer is to eat organic food and to cook from scratch. First of all, this will automatically reduce your added sugar consumption, which is the root cause of insulin resistance and weight gain. By eating organic produce, you'll also cut your exposure to pesticides and genetically engineered ingredients. And in ditching processed foods, you'll automatically avoid artificial sweeteners and harmful processed fats. This is excellent advice. But as far as solving the problem, in our opinion, it falls short of the mark. It's on the way, but it is not a complete solution. Let us look deeper. There is the apparent paradox of poverty and obesity. The two often go together. The South Bronx is one of the nation's obesity capitals. It is also an area of impoverishment. So therefore people refer to this conjunction of obesity and poverty as the Bronx Paradise. As the Bronx Paradox. Indeed, obesity impinges more upon the poor, tragically enough. It is a cry of despair welling up from the soul. It is the cry of those being pushed out of jobs, marginalized, and made utterly dependent. It is a reaction to being forced to collect food stamps indefinitely with no let-up in sight. So what do? They bloat themselves. They make themselves into outcasts and pariahs as a sort of mirror image of what society is doing to them. If you don't have a college degree, if you don't have adequate training, if you're not highly skilled, if you don't do something with computers, the possibility of getting a job these days is not very great. So they make themselves, by bloating themselves, they make themselves into a mirror image, a physical reflection of what society has done to them. Society has marginalized them, has thrown them out. And saddest of all, they make themselves unable to engage in sexual union. Sexual union is a manifestation of wave-like motions from tip to toe throughout one's body, and by bloating themselves, they're going to make this exceedingly difficult. Thus, they put themselves into a situation of sexual stasis, and the whole of all the teachings of Sigmund Freud and psychoanalysis tell us that sexual stasis is the breeding ground of anxiety and neurosis. by all indications, the epidemic is going to get worse. We are at the cusp of a breaking wave of robotics. Driverless cars are already here. Very soon, taxi cabs will be driverless. So too, commercial trucks. Then meat packing, fast food preparation, and hotel cleaning are all going to be done by robots. Now, heretofore, the majority of applications of robotics have been high-end, such as auto assembly lines or medicine. But the next wave will replace entry-level jobs. This will only exacerbate unemployment. For decades, as I'm well aware, the pundits have been saying that automation will lead to loss of jobs. It didn't happen. But this time, it's different. The jobs that are being lost will not be replaced. There is another approach. At the turn of the previous century, 41% of the workforce in this country were involved in agriculture and were living on the land. Today, it's 2%, a deep structural change. Only 2% of the population, of the workforce of the population, are engaged in agriculture. It seems to me that one of the things we need to do is to restore the connection between people and this American earth. To give people a chance to work together as brothers and sisters on the land and to grow their own food. There are tremendous possibilities in urban agriculture. How many parks and vacant lots do we see that can be brought under cultivation? How many schoolyards can be made into edible schoolyards? How many public grounds and parks can be made into, can be brought under permaculture? They will look just as beautiful, just as magnificent, and yet they will produce crops of fruits, berries, and greens. It's all possible. It can all be done. There are so many magnificent examples of this everywhere. Think of it. Give people a chance to work with neighbors and friends in growing at least a part of the food they eat. And this is really a chance to reclaim their self-esteem. Not only self-esteem, but overcoming, to some small degree at least, the extreme isolation in which we live in this nation of strangers. When we compare this to proposals that have been put forth, like banning the use of food stamps for candy or soda, or putting a tax on junk food, or the much publicized attempt by Mayor Bloomberg in New York City to limit the size of sugary drinks to 16 ounces, we cannot but note how impoverished, how superficial these palliatives are. Instead, we call for brothers and sisters to restore and rejuvenate themselves, while at the same time turning their cities into gardens for the human spirit. We maintain that the answer to obesity is to heal this American earth.